Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves. Hello and welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. And this week we've got the topic of values. Big one, a really big one. And Catherine, tell us what values mean to you.
Sure. So it's one of those words, isn't it, we hear often bandied around in phrases like, are you being true to your values? That's a key one, isn't it? And it's actually like, well, what do we really mean by that? It's very easy to say, isn't it, without really questioning what it might mean. So I thought it'd be helpful to start, as we often do, with what do we actually mean by them? And if we think of it in terms of, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. One is it being in relation to the qualities that perhaps define the person we are or that we aspire to be. Yeah. And the other is not just about those personal qualities, it's about the beliefs or principles that you think are important in the way that you live your life and your work, your relationships. So it's a little bit more far-reaching than just like a personal quality. It's a value that can relate to things a bit more broadly. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, the whole beliefs and principles thing, that's sort of striking a chord in terms of what people mean when they say, are you being true to your values? Is it in line with your values? Which, I mean, we hear those phrases so much in sort of the coaching and the personal development world, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think they, for me, the way I see them as actually quite helpful is it can form a sort of a bit of an anchor point, when you're perhaps unsure about something or you're debating something. It can just help you anchor your thinking back to a point that's helpful for you. So if you have that understanding of your values, and this is why you might just want to bother to entertain this and give it some thought, it can help you identify, for example, people that you are drawn to, that you might want to connect with, have a friendship with, relationship with, work with. Same with organizations that you might want to work for. What do they stand for? The type of work you might want to do, how you might do that work. What does that work involve? Is it very much solo? Is it part of a team? All of those kinds of things. And it also helps you identify, which I think is really helpful, the things that you don't like and that you don't stand for and you don't want to tolerate, those kinds of things. So it gives you both sides, if you like, of the same coin, the things that you are not drawn to as much as things that you are drawn to.
Yeah, that's kind of echoing back to one of our previous topics of boundaries, isn't it? Helping you to identify what is acceptable to you.
Yeah, exactly.
What you can tolerate. As how far you can go down that path, as well as what actually lights you up and means something to you.
Yeah. And I think it very much like when we were talking about with boundaries, and I know should is a word we're going to talk about in another episode. It's not about thinking what should matter to you or what matters to other people. Yes, of course, there are going to be influences on our values, probably from our upbringing and our background and what we've seen around us be important. But it's like so many other things. If we're really honest with ourselves, and we were talking about this just now, weren't we, before we came on, Kirsty, about looking at values, and we're going to talk a bit about how you might determine what they are shortly. And you might feel under pressure to think, I must choose this as a value, like, I don't know, being adventurous or fun, whatever it might be. We were both laughing about it because neither of us were particularly drawn to those. But then it goes back to, well, what does being adventurous actually mean to us? Our idea of being adventurous might be very low-key compared to someone else's. And that's fine, because it's like most other things that aren't hard and fast rules on this is how you should do it. this is how it will be useful for you, and this is how you should embed this into your life. The beauty of nearly everything we talk about in the coaching space, yes, they are connected, but you get to decide how you might use it or not. You might just think this is not that relevant to you, but I would encourage you to have a think, even if you did it in a very light touch kind of way, just how to think about it. It might be something that actually deep down you have a really strong sense of what your values are, and you're just bringing those to the surface, checking in, making sure that does feel right for you, and that's fine, and that you are doing things in line with those. Because the alternative is actually you might realize that you're not. There might be things where you're feeling a bit of conflict, and I think sometimes the source of conflict that we have is that things are not in alignment with our values, or we might be crossing the boundaries that we've spoken about. It's like where something's a little bit out of kilter and we haven't quite spotted what it is yet. And that's what I think can happen if we've not quite tuned into these things.
Very, very much so. And I mean, I think one problem that we can often have is, I mean, you made a reference to it, is, we're conditioned into certain values. We grow up with an impression of values. We take on other people's values. The idea that what we have to have in order to be happy, is so influenced by how we grow up, the communities and families we grow up in, the people we grow up around, the people we work with, what we see in the media and social media, all the advertising. It's very easy to start making assumptions about what it is that should matter to you and what's going to make you happy. But then, as you say, you get that internal conflict where it's not working for you and you don't know why, because you're doing things that are in keeping with what seemingly ought to be working for you, and yet it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And they absolutely can change over time as well. That's the other thing. You don't have to worry about, that was a value that I had, but I no longer feel attached to it. That's fine. You can. I'm not saying something you're going to change like every day or anything quite as frequently as that, but it might be something that does shift over time. Like I used to think that I was really ambitious and career driven and all those kinds of things. And then a bit of a realization for me was actually, was that ever me in the first place? Or perhaps it was, but it just isn't anymore. And either of those things is fine. And it just doesn't matter. I just need to recognize that that isn't true for me anymore. Let go of any of that conflict, because what I do now matters to me so much, and it does feel so much more. And we'll talk a little bit about our own values in due course, but you can kind of see the connection between my values, which I know really do matter to me, and now what I do. And of course, talking with you, Kirsty, we do the same role. So it'd be interesting to see if we do have very similar values.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think, certainly my own experience is that my values have evolved greatly, and I think it happens alongside your understanding of yourself, doesn't it? The more self-aware you become, and also the more experience you have of life, the older you get. I think I prefer the more experience you have to the older you get.
Yeah. But, yes, I agree.
Let's do that. The more experienced you become, although that could be misinterpreted. Anyway, I digress. Happens quite a lot. But the more you become self-aware and tuned into yourself, the more that idea of what really matters to you is going to become more finely tuned. And sometimes it's about, ambitious may have contained something within it around success and fulfillment that you are now more fully tuned into than you could have been in your 20s, say. At that time, that word worked for you, but your idea of what it is that it encapsulated may still be true in many ways, but the label on it has changed, and the sense of it you have is a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if one of your values is something like personal success, that's so broad, isn't it? That could look so different at different stages of your life. Depending on your circumstances, your situation, your definition of what success looks like could absolutely have evolved massively, and it's still important to you. It's just what it looks like has shifted. That's a really broad term, isn't it? Success. I think we've spoken a bit about that before, because what is success. As much as I use that example of adventurous, I think we have probably a more common sense for something adventurous as opposed to success. But with any of these words, you get to decide what it means. So let's talk a little bit about working out what your values might be and how many you should even have. And as probably won't surprise you to hear us say that there are no hard and fast rules of how many or for working them out. What we will do is we'll include in our show notes a few ideas of where, if you're really struggling, you don't even know where to start working out what your values might be, we'll pop a couple of suggestions in there as to where you might start looking to unearth these. But we were talking just now, weren't we, Kirsty, about some of the pros and cons of these, because one of the really obvious places to start is a list of values. And I know we've both seen quite a few of these examples, haven't we? But it can almost look a bit like a really overwhelming menu, and you feel like you should pick everything on it. It's like, oh, well, that's
you don't
a good
want to
word.
miss out. Yeah.
I don't want to miss out FOMO. So you end up with, you can't just replicate the whole list and think, well, because some of them will be quite, you will find some opposites in there. But they can equally be a bit of a helpful guiding point just to get you thinking, oh, these are the sorts of things I might want to include. But yes, as Kirsty rightly pointed out, the tricky thing is you can start thinking, oh, maybe I should have that one, or am I missing out by not having this group? Does this mean I'm boring? Does this mean I'm dull? Does it, we make some inferences, can't we, about what we don't want on our list and end up putting things on our own personal list that really we don't want. And that's kind of a fool's errand, isn't it? It's going to send us in a circle that's not that helpful.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you Google values lists, you'll come with all sorts of lists, arranged differently in different words. And I mean, I've used lots of these, and I've got lots of, pardon the pun, value from doing it. But there was also that sense, partly of overwhelm. There are too many here, and there are so many good words here. How do I choose? And also partly, well, maybe I should be that. Maybe this is what I should be trying to tap into, even though it doesn't feel like me. The whole ambitious, adventurous, fun. So many other people are picking these kind of words, and maybe I should. So I found that a bit off-putting, but as a starting point for just looking at those words, letting those words settle, and something you mentioned when we were talking about this that I liked is spotting the similarities, the patterns in the words you're using, if you're drawn to the same type of word. And that can help reduce the overwhelm, because then you start recognizing that they are part of something bigger, and you can sort of use one of those words to encapsulate the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know now at this stage in my life, I'm definitely drawn to the words that are more, I can recognize they have this sort of similarity. There'll be things like balance and a little bit of calm. I'm not into sort of frantic, hectic busyness. So all the ones that suggest a real kind of pace and, I was going to say energy, but that's not quite the right word either. But you know what I mean? I know that that's not so much for me at this stage in my life. I know that I'll be drawn to the words that are a bit more about, appreciation, a bit of slowing down. Balance is, I think, one of my strongest ones, but that's another one that's massively open to interpretation, because I know my idea of balance now is very different to what it was before I became a parent, for example. I think it can be a helpful place to start, but you've also got another idea, haven't you, Kirsty? We'll perhaps give a bit more guidance around this in the notes. But instead of being overwhelmed by starting from a very hypothetical point of view and looking at lots of words and thinking, what are you drawn to? You need to do the exact opposite and reflect on some of your own experiences and think of the words that relate to those experiences. So they're very much grounded in reality, and they're experiences that you've been really, drawn to, really monumental, positive occasions, but maybe on the flip side, the ones that have been bad. And I thought that was such a good idea.
Yeah, I can't remember where this exercise came from. I remember doing it on a workshop a couple of years or so ago now. Sadly, all the details elude me apart from the exercise itself.
But that's the important bit. So that's
the important bit, isn't it? Yeah. It would have been frustrating if it was the other way around. But yeah, so it's this idea that you tap into ideally at least 2 or 3 moments in your life when you felt really good, when that stick in your memory as happy times, successful times, good times. The kind of thing, if anybody ever says, take yourself off to your happy place, where do you go? Think of that kind of thing. And, if you're trying to tap into a time when you felt really confident, really good about yourself, it's those kind of moments that you're looking for. And ideally 2 or 3, as many as you would like, just write about them, write about how you felt, write about what you were doing, who you were with, what was going on around you, the environment you were in, everything that comes up for you. And then spot the consistencies between them. What do they have in common? And what does that tell you about what it is that sort of really matters to you and lights you up and makes you feel good?
Yeah.
And so the reverse of that, which you can do, depending on how you feel about it, you can do it as well or instead of, is look at the times when you felt shit. Some people find it easier to come up with plenty of those, but some of the worst times that you've experienced, do exactly the same. What was going on? And then the commonalities you find between those, flip them. If those things make you feel so awful, what's the reverse of them? What's missing that is going to make you feel good?
Yeah. I think that's such a really helpful way of looking at it. I think through a combination of both those things, I think you'd get a really strong sense of what you are drawn to for you now, and the things that do matter to you, and the questions, things that you can be asking yourself as you're thinking about these words, when you're reflecting on your experiences, are things like what drives you, what you care about, your passions, inspiration, what you aspire to have more of or to be like. And as you said, Kirsty, how you want to feel. And I think if you tune into those sorts of thoughts and questions as you're either doing either approach, I think you'll end up, or a combination of the two, you will end up with a real sense of what your values might be, and then how that might be useful for you. Because if you think about values in real life, and this is just picking an example, employers often publish their values, don't they? Somewhere on their website, it'll be published, their values alongside their mission and their vision. And you think, well, why? What are they doing that for? And I suppose what they're doing, they're trying to say it's an opportunity for them to share what's important to them, what they stand for, the kind of employer they are, kind of the people that they want to attract to work for them, and to help you decide, yes, I would like to work for a company like this. And I know you had a really interesting point to add on to this, didn't you?
Well, cynic that I am, my first reaction to a list of corporate values is that it's a tick box exercise, aimed at making them look good. And actually, all they want is for their staff to do what they're told when it comes down to it. But maybe I have just worked in the wrong kind of environments and I'm too cynical. I am sure there are organizations out there that do want them to mean something and work to make them mean something.
Yeah. I do get exactly what you're saying. And the whole point of doing this is not to do your own personal tick box exercise. It's like, well, what is this information telling me about myself, my preferences, what I want, and then what can you do about it? It's not just having a list of words for the sake of having a list of words. Same as an employer shouldn't be having, a list of values that don't mean anything. I know exactly what you're saying. I guess I could only hope that if you felt that they were not acting in accordance with their own values, you could point it out to them.
They generally don't like that. No. But yeah, what you say, it's not just a list of words, and it's not about virtue signaling. It's, your own values, you don't ever have to share with anyone. I mean, I think in sort of the coaching world and when you're looking at personal growth and that, maybe it's something that is talked about rather more than it is, between mates at the pub or whatever. You rarely sit down with your friends and go, so tell me, what are your values? So this is not about having a list of words that's going to make you look good. This is about having a list of words that help you tap into what makes you feel good.
Yeah. And you probably will get a sense anyway. I think, when you meet somebody and you kind of click, chances are it's because you do have, whether you call it this or not, aligned values. And equally, you probably get an immediate sense of someone who's got very, very different values to you. So one of the reasons this is quite helpful it's just as much as employers might publicly be saying what their values are to try and attract or repel suitable candidates. For us in real life, it helps us to attract or repel, relationships and interactions that we want to be involved in, or people that we just have a sense, we have very conflicting values, and that's okay. We're certainly allowed to. You may still get on regardless, but it probably can highlight for you where there are differences between your views and someone else's, and people that you might find you have a real natural affinity with. And that, I guess, a little step further from this is personal and professional values. Are they the same thing? Can they be the same thing? Should they be the same thing? And again, no hard and fast rules here. They certainly can be, but they don't have to be. And you said, Kirsty, that perhaps they're very likely to sort of cross over, aren't they? And probably be quite interchangeable, but you might just prioritize them a little bit differently when it comes to your personal life and your professional life.
Yeah, I came into a sense of my own values sort of towards the end of my corporate life, so I didn't have a lot of chance to sort of understand how it worked for me in those contexts in a really conscious way at the time. But looking back on it, and just sort of based on my instinct, it seems to me that it would be slightly odd to have a different value in your work life to in your personal life. But what you might have is a very different idea of prioritizing them. So, random example, efficiency, for instance, might crop up for you in work quite high up on your list. And it might be something that does actually matter to you in your personal life. You want to get all the stuff you need to get done as efficiently as possible and free up your time to be with your family. But it would be quite rare for somebody to really rate that, high on the list in their personal life, I suspect. But it doesn't mean it doesn't matter to them, if you see what I mean. You want to get the housework done as quickly as possible. You want it to be done as efficiently as possible. But it may not be a word that's going to come up for you. No. You want to make sure your bills, your money is sorted and your bills are paid in the most efficient way possible. And that, you get your laundry done so the kids have got the uniform they need at the time they need it. All that is actually about efficiency, but you wouldn't probably recognize it when you're looking at personal values.
Yeah, no, I do understand what you're saying. So I think what we're actually going to do, we're going to do the question first this week and end with our quotes, because it just seems so timely to talk about our own examples actually that might be helpful. So the question is, what are your personal and or professional values? With the point being, the add-on question being, and are you meeting them? And I was reflecting on mine. So I have written some values for me in business, which have been the same now since I started, really. And I did find this really helpful. And I do have slightly different ones personally, because a bit like what you were saying, Kirsty, just that sense of what's really a priority. But I thought if I just mentioned them, it would probably make more sense. So my business values are kindness, acceptance, and courage, which I realise spells CAC, but it's because yours makes a much nicer monogram than mine. But anyway, so I have
reorder it for AC.
Well, yes, I know, because I thought if I put courage first, it's even worse CAC, isn't it? But this is anyway. But actually, kindness I have got first, because I do think that's so important. And I think it's one of those words that's treated very lightly. People think it's a bit of a nothing word, a bit like nice. But I actually disagree. I think kindness is actually a lot more powerful than that. And the reason I have it is because, yes, I'm all about showing kindness to others, because we never know what is going on for other people. We know when they snap at us and we weren't expecting it. We don't know what necessarily has been going on. They might, not just having a bad day. There might be an awful lot more to it. But it's also about extending that kindness to ourselves, which I think is so important. And that's, as a coach, something I'm really passionate about. I think we beat ourselves up an awful lot. We're very, very hard on ourselves. And I like to try and remind myself of that as well. That's one of the reasons why that's my first value. The acceptance part, again, it kind of has twofold to it, because it's first of all about accepting and recognizing and understanding what is the reality of what we are facing right now, the situation we're in, how we feel, before we can do anything about it, before changing it if we want to. But the second part of that acceptance is from that perspective of you're not broken, you don't need fixing. Some support might be really beneficial, but you're allowed to be uniquely you with your own preferences, strengths, quirks, your values. So the acceptance part is kind of twofold as well. I'm a bit sneaky, maybe, Kirsty. I think maybe I'll try and wrap in more into one word than
I
perhaps
think
is fair.
No, that's perfectly valid.
Thank you. Thank you. And then the final one with courage, which is probably a lot more straightforward, because I'm a big believer in that courage is often first step to a number of things. I mean, awareness is obviously one that comes first with a lot of coaching terms we talk about. You have to be aware of it. But courage comes before things like confidence, we've spoken about before. We need courage to take action. We need courage to make changes that we want for ourselves. We need courage to say no sometimes. We need courage to stand up for our boundaries, our values. And
I think you need courage to bring that awareness as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be willing to bring the awareness to what you're going to find. I think that takes courage.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need that as your starting point to do anything about it. So they were just sort of natural ones I was drawn to in my coaching context. And I would say those are probably very true of me in my personal life as well. But as I mentioned before, I'm very much drawn to things like balance in my personal life and also a bit of the self-development and, what am I still learning now? Because it's funny now, I recognize this. Learning now for me is something I choose to do, and it's much more fun. Whereas learning before is like, you doing your A-levels and learning about formulas and all that kind of stuff. It's like that was not my idea of fun, but I've got a very different perspective on learning now. So
we used to have to learn what other people wanted us to learn, and now we can learn what we want to.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, that's enough about mine. Kirsty, tell us about yours.
Oh, lovely set of values. I mean, you said about sort of trying to wrap too much into a word. Well, I'm going to call you amateur on that one because
Ooh, harsh.
I know I am laying down the gauntlet.
Okay, go for it. Hit me.
So my core values, and I apply them both personally and professionally, are light, open, and trust. And I can wrap so much shit up in that. Light, it's about shining your own light. It's about lighting up other people, about lightness of spirit, lightness of heart. It's about looking for the light in the dark and lightening the load. And as you can see, you can use that word in so many ways.
Very good. Bravo. I take my hat off to you. I think you just found every possible use of the word light there. And I love that yours comes out as lot, which I think we can agree is quite nice as opposed to cack.
I could have had toll if I'd done it differently. Which doesn't sound quite so appealing.
No, I like lot.
I mean, open, again, it was primarily about being open-minded. I felt about being open-minded to other ways of thinking and feeling and being, to what others think and how they are, to be open-hearted as well. Their sense of sort of emotional generosity, being willing to give emotionally. Sometimes it can be very easy to shut yourself off and to be a little bit averse to being vulnerable. So just being open to new experiences, open to growth, to connection, to hearing my own intuition, open to my own needs and to the needs of others, open to all the feelings rather than, trying to resist the ones that might seem a bit difficult. And trust. You'll be glad to hear is the shortest one. Trust in myself, trust in the universe, trust in the good in others, and trust that everything will be okay eventually, even if I don't know how.
Sure, I love that. I'm going to scrap all of mine and just steal yours instead.
Now, we talked about this before, Catherine. It's not just about taking on other people's values.
No, this is true. Yes, mustn't steal from other people. No, I love that. I love how you've really interpreted them as broadly as you can, but you can see the lovely connection between them all, especially with the light and the open ones. I think they've got such beautiful ways of reflecting what you mean by that. And it's true. I can actually see it in you from what I know of you.
Oh, thank you.
And seen from your posts and things. Yeah. I love those. So I hope that's been helpful for people. Like I said, we'll put some resources in the notes to give people an idea of where they might want to start with their own. But let's end with some quotes for you then for today about values. So the first one we've got for you is, when your values are clear to you, making decisions becomes easier. And that's Roy E. Disney. And I think that's such a really simple way of saying a reason why you might want to bother doing this is because if you know what matters, your decisions are going to be less up in the air, because you've got that anchor, that grounding point of, I know that this matters to me or this doesn't. So gives you that chance to make decisions easier. And who doesn't want easier decision making?
Absolutely. And you referred in a previous episode to the body barometer, when you realize from those little clues in your body that something isn't right. And I think that using that along with your sense of your values can make such a difference to the decision-making process. And that sense of what's right to you, I realize I'm getting so much better at realizing when there is a sense of heaviness around a decision, it's not in alignment with my values, because it's not right. And it's definitely changed decision-making for me. So yeah, that's a great quote. And I have to say that one of my favorite ones on values is from Elvis Presley. I haven't checked out whether it's genuine. Some of these are sort of, they get attributed to people who never said them, but I'd love to think he said it.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Values are like fingerprints. Nobody's the same, but you leave them all over everything you do. And I think that's that idea of them being like fingerprints, I think is...
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they're allowed to be unique to you, but they will show. I think that's the other thing. If you were constantly trying to align with something that wasn't true to you, it would fall out of sync. It wouldn't show up genuinely. So I think this idea that they would leave like a fingerprint behind, I think I really like that image. And one of my favorites is Michelle Obama, because I love what she says. Makes a huge amount of sense. Absolutely. She said, "I have learned that as long as I hold fast to my beliefs and values and follow my own moral compass, then the only expectations I need to live up to are my own." Which is, I think, she could be a coach, couldn't she?
Yeah, follow that.
Yeah. She just put the microphone down and left. There you go.
Seems like the perfect point at which to end the episode.
I think it does. So, we will see you again soon for another episode on another topic. And if you have any questions, please do let us know.
In the meantime, good luck finding your values. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.